Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you all. I'd like to call our special meeting of our Town Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Today is Monday, June 30th. It is 6 o'clock, 6:01 p.m. My name is Robert Klee. I'm the chair of our Woodbridge Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Other members of the commission with us here tonight are Vice Chair Jeff Kennedy and TPZ member Andrew Skolnick. And we have our TPC alternates all here in force today: Kathy Hunter, Robert Wisnia, and Sarah Locke. Great to see you all. We may, Ben and Paul may be joining us later, but we thought we'd get started on time. So thank you, Chris Sullivan, as always, for all your help, including on vacation, for supporting us in the work we're doing. Good to be here in person. Our agenda tonight has been available on the town website, and this is part of our special meeting series where we've been talking with our consultants, SLR, who shared the first full draft of the Plan of Conservation Development. So I believe tonight we're going to go through that and comments that members of the commission may have, the hopes of getting it to a stage where we can share it with the public and keep moving forward on our Plan of Conservation Development process. And with that, I pass it over to our consultants.
Okay, great. Good evening. Robert Collins with SLR, project manager, and been assisting you with the POCD update. It's a pleasure to be in front of you tonight. So, not exactly 100% sure how you ultimately might want to proceed, but I know that mainly at first I need to just talk about some processing and maybe answer some questions, and then we can kind of take it from there. So what you received for tonight's meeting through Chris is the first full draft of the updated POCD. And this document puts together all the pieces that we've talked about over the last year, from the community profile and existing conditions, public engagement events like the community survey, the 2 open houses, and then you might recall back in January we talked about the vision statement for the document. We came up with the themes, and then in the last couple months we've had several meetings and we reviewed the various goals, strategies, and actions items or action steps for those various theme items. So what, the plan that you have in front of you now puts together all of those pieces. Really the next step in the process is for us to determine whether you feel that the plan is substantially complete, and I can kind of explain what that means. And then ultimately, by taking a motion and a vote, you will like to say that you do find it to be substantially complete, and that you want staff or the town to then begin the 65-day review process, which involves transmitting it to the Board of Selectmen for their review, as well as the COG. And both of those entities have 65 days in order to review it and get you back any comments, either recommendations or some kind of formal process. You can proceed after that 65 day, and that's something else that we would set in the motion. We would officially pick that day depending on how our discussions go, because you could potentially find the plan substantially complete, but you might want like 2 small changes or 2 changes. And we could make those, and then we could say, okay, let's transmit it, like say on Monday the 7th, if you decide that's the day. We would make those changes, forward it to Chris, and then she would proceed with sending out those transmittals. During that time period, and no less than 35 days prior to the end, the document also has to be posted on the town's website and allow the general public to review it and supply comments. But I imagine, as usually the case, and usually what we recommend is that you could, if you're transmitting it to the Board of Selectmen and to the COG, we could probably within a week or so also post it on the town's website. And then, have some kind of link where people could submit comments or questions, and then we can slowly but surely compile them and then share them back with you once we get to the end of that 65-day review period. We would then set up a special meeting. We would come back together. We would share the recommendation that we got from COG, from the Board of Selectmen, and then from the general public. And that could happen at a special meeting and then proceed to a public hearing, or it could happen at a public hearing. That's something that we would all decide together. Now, to find the plans, would you have any initial questions about that process, or did I miss anything?
So there would be two public hearings, one for our commission, and then if the Board of Selectmen decide to have a public hearing, they would have one as well?
That's right, but it's crucial what you just said is if they decide to. They're not required to. So there's only officially one public hearing that's officially required, and that's your public hearing. That would happen after the 65-day period. The Board of Selectmen, when they receive it, they talk amongst themselves and they decide whether they want to have a public hearing, but it has to happen within that 65-day period.
When are the Board of Selectmen meetings? So if we release it, will it be in time for?
I believe it's the second
Second Wednesday.
Wednesday of the month.
Okay, so even if we have minor edits and changes and sort of aim for that after July 4th release date.
They meet in August also, right?
They do?
No, I mean,
Well, if they were going to have a meeting and then they would have to schedule a public hearing,
yeah.
so, right.
I just want to fit their schedule.
Right, but I mean, they have 65 days, so if say, the transmittal date was the 7th of July, the end of the 65 days, we could look at the calendar, but it would probably be sometime before the 15th of September. So they would have any time in that period to be able to have that, to review it and then have a public hearing if they wanted to.
If they want, yes.
You can decide to move forward after those 65 days, even if they're still doing their process or if you haven't heard from them. Usually, there's cooperation between the TPZ and the Board of Selectmen or the town council, and so we can work through some of those issues if they should come up, or if they ask for like an extra 5 days or something like that. You could just delay coming back together even though the 65-day period passed. But assuming that they have a meeting in late August or a special one, or maybe at the very beginning of September, that would probably, give them time to advertise it and then have that public hearing if they wanted to have it near the end of the 65-day period. Now, I usually try to refer to it as far as going forward with any kind of changes, the easiest way I found to explain it is I divide them up between substantial edits and non-substantial, or substantive, I should say. That's what I meant to say. And substantive edits or problems or issues would have to do with probably the vision statement, the goals, the strategies, the action steps. And those are things that we've all carefully reviewed, so hopefully those are in fairly good shape. Also, the future land use map is also something that would be, it's officially part of this document, and therefore it would be considered a substantive type of item. Other items that would be considered non-substantive would be changes to other maps or labeling, pictures, picture comments, changing pictures, typos, maybe some basic grammatical changes and things like that. Those types of things could be being gathered over the summer, like if you wanted to look at it more carefully, just to look for those types of things. We could start making an ongoing list and making sure that those types of things are put together in one list, and then another list of more substantive things are put together. And then when we come back together for the public hearing and adoption, we could talk very clearly over what the substantive items are and then the non-substantive items. If that's, because obviously you might not have had a chance if you wanted to move forward tonight, for instance, and you've looked at it, but you haven't read every single word. There would definitely be time for you to do that during that 65-day period, just like the general public.
And before we get into that, there are 3 appendices, but I don't think we had those.
That's correct.
Yeah,
because
so maybe
those are,
explain how that comes together.
Sure. I mean, we will make sure that those items are available when they get transmitted, except for, well, Actually, because they're appendices, one of them is not complete yet, but because they're appendix to the document, they're not necessarily part of the substantive items. But one of them is let me just look at them really quickly.
It's the community profile and existing conditions, community survey results, and then implementation plan. Implementation
Right,
plans
and-
seem to be the one that,
Right, because the first two are things that you've already seen, they're already
Yeah.
posted on the project website, so those are kind of known entities. The implementation table basically pulls together all of the goals, strategies, and action steps and puts them into a table, kind of similar to what you have in your existing plan. And what we had talked about before, and I'll mention it again, is probably once the plan goes out for the 65-day review period, that's something that we could come back together in the summer. I could put all of the goals and strategies and action steps into a similar table. Could initially work with Chris just to get some of the responsible parties and entities, and then we could review it with you as far as the timeframes go. But again, there's nothing, it's more of like most of it is items that are already in the plan. It's just the responsible parties and the timeframe that we would be working on, and then that would get incorporated into the plan at the time of adoption.
so I'll just start by saying it's an impressive document, and kudos to you and your team for pulling it together and drafting it. I actually have read it, and we'll have some of those non-substantive edits even tonight for you, because that's my nature.
Perfect.
And I did think you did capture those vision, the things we've been working hard on, I think are well captured and presented and organized and formatted now in the document, so I appreciate that. And then interesting sort of additional, the state and regional plan consistency section was a new section for us, which is interesting and not your fault, but it ends up having paragraphs that then have C strategies 1.1, 1.1.2, 1. Like long lists
Right.
of numbers in it, which
Yeah, and I thought maybe there might be some comments about that because we put so many strategies in. We are actually accomplishing what the state wants us to do in many, many different ways. And in some cases, the state and the regional plans are kind of repetitive now with their priorities or their goals. I mean, like I think a couple of them, they incorporate several items that we talk about in several different places. So it was hard to kind of succinctly do that. And we could back that out instead of doing strategies, which I've done in other towns. We could do just goals, like just by saying, it's like this goal is, and look at the strategies within this goal. But I think, at least for your benefit at this point, to see how much your plan is meeting the consistency, but we could back that off if it looks too repetitive.
I have to say that I find that very helpful because in terms of, and I just think of like when you're writing a state grant, you always have to link it to like these growth strategies and into the POCD, and to be able to have that, reference as to where these strategies are. And maybe it's just kind of a personal, selfish interest, but that to me was very helpful because then you could say, okay, you're doing something, you're writing a grant, you could quickly link it to, how it's consistent with one of these growth strategies in the POCD.
Right. The state principles and then the state plan and then the regional plans, they all talk about the same subject. So that's also the reason why it also becomes kind of repetitive. If we bounce back to the goals, it might still give you the information you need, but it could also stay as is. Or it could maybe go into an appendix or something like that if you feel like it looks.
no, I'm fine keeping it as it is, but it just I think it does actually highlight that we're consistent in a whole bunch of our strategies with all these.
And you can see why it would, because there's so many different things to mention, how it would be hard to write that all out rather than just referencing them, because there's so many different ways that you're finding it consistent.
So folks have other questions, comments before I go into literally little nitpicky things?
I think it's helpful just to go through it trying to go fast, but
Yeah,
I
so-
read the whole thing, so I saw some.
I did as well. Would it be appropriate for your non-substantive comments to be heard before we find or not find the, it to be substantially complete? Or doesn't it matter?
I don't know if it matters. It doesn't matter to me.
Well, do you want to break it down to maybe like, is there anything that is, like when it comes to something that's substantive that might need to change?
Yeah, does anyone have,
And then non-substantive things, maybe they could be, you could email them or something like that, but you could maybe give a preview of them?
yeah,
Could we
that's
pa-
fair. Does anyone have, let's start with the big.
Right.
Does anyone have substantive things that stood out that you felt that you,
All right, I have something I think is pretty easy. It's just a problem. So there's a lot of data on here, like where people work in town and things like that, and what towns they work in and stuff. How do you get that data?
Well, that's all from
Because
the,
It's very, very detailed.
it's from the community profile, existing conditions, which remember is going to be attached as one of the appendices, and
So
then
where does
all,
that data get fed into that? I'm just curious.
I mean, each one of the data points in the community profile has like the data source.
Okay.
Depends on the data source. I mean, some of it is U.S. Census or American Community Survey. Some of it's from the state. A lot of the employment stuff
So it's a
comes.
compilation of different data
Yes.
sources that feed into where people work, like their commute times. There's a lot of granular data.
Right,
like
like
that.
that's from U.S. Census, for instance, because I know that. But that's either clarified by a footnote, or again, you could refer to the addendum, the appendix, which is going to have that document, which is readily available already to the public.
Okay. Yep, thank you. The cover letter, that's going to come out at some future point in time, right?
I'm
yeah.
supposed to write that, okay.
Well, I sense,
Because like in terms of is it substantially complete, I would like to see the cover letter. I got both that it's complete, but just I bet if the chairman writes it, it's gonna be really good. So I will give the benefit of the
well, we did
doubt.
send some examples, and usually it's kind of like a broad, like a short letter, but it's up to you.
It's going to be a short.
And usually that gets added in, that's something else with the things that are like, because that letter technically is non-substantive, what we could do as well is like, as we get like the acknowledgement page, or if we add a picture, before we post it on the town's website, we could update for some of those things. Or at the end of the process, we could update for all the non-substantive stuff and share with you prior to like the public hearing.
Thank you.
It's your, we have some options.
I'm not also sure what is nitpicky and what's not, to use a
Yeah.
layperson's term. Like we do border the down. Don't we touch the town of Derby's border?
Yes,
I think so, yeah.
yes.
So
definitely.
that's not the introduction to the town. That's missing. It's like 3 or 4 pages in. So it says, did I miss it? Bethany, Hamden, New Haven, Orange, Seymour, and Ansonia.
I mean, the regional map shows that, but we could add that.
But it says it's the introduction to the town of Woodbridge. It's the first paragraph. Every town is listed except for Derby.
Yeah, I mean, those are the types of things that you could put together in like a.
I can email that.
You
to
could email them to us,
Okay,
and
okay.
we could compile them, and then when we come together to talk about sometime in the summer when we come together to talk about the implementation plan, we could maybe share everybody's non-substantive items.
Okay.
There was something else I just remembered too, is related to the future land use map, because that is a substantive thing, where all the other maps are just informational. We had talked when we were going over that about including the the public sewer and water and watershed. We found it to be graphically almost impossible, so that you could still read the plan. And in talking with Chris and looking
wanna-
at some options,
Yeah, do you want to bring that one up? It's 95, I think, is the page for those who are.
we found it in kind of impossible to like really show it so that it could be readily legible. But there is a water and sewer map. there is that utilities map. And so while they're not overlaid, you can see that. And then we talked about potentially supplying Chris's office with like a full size that wouldn't be in the plan, but if somebody came and, or if you needed to use it for an application or something like that, that could be reviewed. I mean, Chris already has some similar things in her office already that show those items. But because of the fact that the water and sewer is in such a small area and it's basically in the business district, it was really hard to see, and it does. So we didn't end up showing that on the future land use map, but it is shown again on the inventory map.
It's possible just to kind of, I mean, I just went through, I did read the whole thing, and I just noted on each page changes, and some might be just minor tweaks, but some may, I don't know if it's just a minor thing or a major thing. So I think it may warrant some conversation. So is it possible just to like go from the beginning?
We can flip through, sure. That's why we gathered today. But before we do the flip through, anyone else have any more high level or broader or big picture things that they wanted to share before we flip pages?
Well, I think Kathy was indicating she might have some substantive comments.
Yeah, right, as we go, but she wants to go through all.
Yep. Page by page.
Well, not every page. I mean, I just have, some comments. So should I just go from my beginning or?
Yeah, go.
Yep, get to it.
I mean, my first comment was on page 5. And we had talked about, under public engagement, under the TPC meetings, it's hard to say that, but you have members of the public have the opportunity to listen and engage with TPC members on the plan's development. I don't think the public had engagement with TPC members, but they certainly were able to come and listen. So I just thought we could just say that the residents had the opportunity to listen, in on the plan's development. Because there's certainly, I mean, I don't think there was an actual engagement with people that came to listen.
I mean, that sentence could just be crossed
People made
out.
no comments at all?
No, we don't have dialogue.
I see, all right.
So I don't feel that's really representative of what happened. People came and listened, but they weren't able to engage in dialogue with what we're discussing. So I just thought we could just say, they had the opportunity to listen in on the process,
Is it necessary to say that part or just pull the sentence?
or even pull a sentence
Yeah,
out.
because I wonder if you're saying, oh, they just got to listen and it's better to not say anything at all.
I think
We
just
could-
delete the sentence.
Yeah, just delete the sentence.
Yep.
Fine.
Okay.
And then on page 14, and I did bring this up before in my comments, and we never really discussed it, but, I'm not really comfortable with the way the data is presented in terms of,
I'm sorry, which data?
this is page 14, when it talks about
Household.
That's the PDF page 14, or is it what's the page number at the bottom,
It's
Kathy?
the page, it's page 14.
With household size comparison?
Yes,
and-
Woodbridge, when you talk about Woodbridge population continues to diversify, Hispanic, Asian, Black, multiracial represents a growing share of the population. I don't feel that, Black, African American, going from, 0.8%, 1% in 2010 to going to 1.79% in 2020 represents a growing share. And when I looked at the way it was worded in the previous POCD, it was more, I think, a representative discussion of the population. It talked about small increases were also recorded in the number of Black and multiracial residents. So I just think, you know, it shouldn't seem that the increase of Black population is a growing share of the population when it's really went from 1% to 1.79%. And the way it's phrased that it actually grew 52.6% because that represents the increase from 1% to 1.79%. Do you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't feel right to me, so I just want to bring it up to see how other commissioners felt about it. The prior POCD did talk about, noted that small increases were also recorded, and I think that's fair to say it's small increases. But I feel like it's kind of making it seem like it's more than it is by saying it increased by 52.6%.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you because when I read it the first time, it was like, oh, we're 73% white. And I was like, oh, wow, the Black population increased by 52%. And then I looked over at the table and I was like, well, that was 91 people.
Yeah.
So the town of 9,000. I mean, unless we wanted to add the total percent as a third column, percent of town.
Because right now that percent is the percent change.
Right,
Versus.
exactly. The percent of the whole town, which is very different.
Well, maybe in that column we should say percent change. These are accurate figures. It's not like they're
Yeah, I mean,
overstated.
the whole thing is called population changes, so that percent is the change,
Yeah.
but you added a third column, you changed the title. The second column would be percent changes, and the third column would be percent total.
I mean, I did write this up in comments previously, but it just never was brought up, and I just feel like I needed to bring this up again. Again, the way the prior POCD, I think, had a more balanced approach to talking about Woodbridge's diversification.
So, Robert, what have other towns done in similar tables?
I mean, I would say this. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I think it's a subtle thing. I mean, it's really only giving the facts, it's not trying to pass judgment. I feel, there could be maybe a word tweak if you're more comfortable with it, but it's just really presenting the facts. It doesn't say substantial or anything like that, but the truth is that the town has become more diverse. It didn't stay exactly the same. There was a decrease in the white population and an increase in other types of populations. It's kind of a steady, slow, but it's up to you how you want to present your data.
Would you be comfortable, Kathy, with replacing the word growing with increasing?
I would probably be comfortable with saying that Black and African Americans saw a slight increase.
So it's only the last one? It's not the Hispanic or Asian population?
Well, the Hispanics did double. I mean, and the Asians, I mean, that's the reason why we do have the non-white population is growing because of the Asian population. We have a large percentage of Asians that are in Woodbridge, but that's because they could pay for the price of admission to live in Woodbridge.
So you're thinking that maybe you could say the Black or African American population increased slightly to 52.6%, or increased by?
Well, it did increase by, not to.
Yeah, I meant to say by, not to.
You could take this table, and just add another column, like I said, that had the percent of the total population as a third column, and just call this population 2010 to 2020. And that way you, in the second column, you say percent,
Total
Change.
percentage.
yeah, percent change and then total percent. So it kind of shows, it kind of makes your point, but it's accurate completely. I mean, you could do that with that table, just have a third column there.
Would you need 4 columns because the count is the count changed, correct? So
Yeah.
over that 10-year period, there were 980 fewer white people and 423 more Asian people. But I agree. I think the table is a good place to put some context with that total percentage additional column.
Yeah, that way you're making your point, and it's still not a very big difference. You know, it's right there, you know.
But the increases are real.
Yeah, they're real, but I'm saying this way, it's not like it's a massive change in the population.
You know, the points are supposed to be just pointing out the important things and not like just repeating all the data that's in the community profile. So that's the only reason why we didn't include like that initially in the table, because it's supposed to be just looking about focusing in on the change. Kind of changes the dynamics if we change the table to include like the total population as well. And we were trying to get away from just showing like the raw census data that's already included in the community profile. We can do that, but I would need very clear directive. But I think it is easier just to change maybe the point about the change by maybe adding a word or two that was being suggested before.
I mean, another suggestion is just say, you know, when you're talking about the growing share of the population, say Asian, Hispanic, Asian, multiracial, and leave black out. And that would show that they're not part of the growing share of the population, because they're certainly not part of the growing share of the population.
Well, it increased by 91 in a small town. That's not something
Yeah,
not to
I
consider. I mean,
disagree with
91
that
additional
assessment.
residents is pretty significant
Well-
for the population of Woodbridge.
Okay,
I mean, if it was like 2 or 3, that would be one thing, but 91
Yeah.
is a lot.
well, I mean, again, you know, I come in with a different lens. So to me, that's not a growing share. I don't see that as a growing share. And again, this is me coming from my lens, coming from where I grew up. I think by saying like, oh wow, it increased by 52.6 overrepresents the increase of 1% to 1.79%. But
I would be hesitant to include a conditional word with respect to the end of the sentence there, and not with respect to the others.
I thought if you made like a third column and just let people come to their conclusions from looking at it, I think that you would see the changes. You know, it's
I think what he's saying is that already exists in another part of the document, and that this
Yeah.
was just talking about the
Yeah.
changes, not the
well,
overall census facts.
I suppose, but and I agree with you, but you're kind of making like she's saying, you're making a point here, and you want to put it into a broad, the real context. I mean, it's, you know, not a huge
But
change.
how much more context than the actual numbers?
Well, I
It's the same as the numbers are representative with respect to the other groups
Well,
without
I don't-
change.
I'm not against leaving it this way. I'm just saying, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make suggestions for what she's saying that could include it. But it does, I mean, it shows, as you said, that 91 additional black or African Americans is
over a
Good.
10-year
A
period.
10-year, it's not huge, but it is a real difference, there's no question about it.
All right, well, I just, I had to bring it up again, because, again, it talks about population continues to diversify, and I personally do not feel that, you know, an increase from 1% to 1.79% is, contributes, you know, to a growing population, but.
But I think it's still accurate. Our population is continuing to diversify. You look at the numbers across the board in the table.
Yes, absolutely, but I
Yeah.
just,
It's more than
I-
it was before,
I
10
just
years.
feel the way it's represented here it just makes it seem like there is a huge, you know, it increased by 52, the population, Black or African American population increased by a whopping 52.6%. And that, what that really represents is an increase of 1% to 1.79% over 10 years. But,
I'm just hesitant to include an adverb there that doesn't
okay.
also apply to a different adverb that might apply to any of the other numbers. I think the numbers speak for themselves.
And then, Robert, reading it a little more closely now, the other major mover was the 2 or more races, went up 240 people, but we don't include that in our narrative paragraph.
Yeah, that's
And should we?
I mean, we can if you want.
Is that elsewhere, Mr. Chairman?
No, it's in the table. And it would be, it says 2 or more races, 240 additional people, which is 189% increase.
So include where, how much it increased in terms of percentage.
I'm just asking, that one wasn't in the
Right, I
list.
mean, we were just
I
trying
mean,
to give a
neither was-
summary.
right.
But we could add whichever ones. I think we were just trying to stick with the major race groups. Because sometimes if, you know, we can certainly say and include 2 or more. I mean, you tell me which ones you want to include, and we were just trying to give a summary, like, that gives a snapshot of the fact that they're increasing. You can't pull out one or the other one because they were all increasing. And this is just supposed to give a snapshot of those increases. But we could replace Black and African American population with 2 or more. We could just list the ones that were a higher percentage, or we could list all of them, which, I mean, I don't know if we would want to list
Is,
American Indian or Native Alaskan or Native Hawaiian because they're so small, but we could list the other 2, some other race alone, or 2 or more races.
what is a multiracial resident? Is that a 2 or more races?
Yes, that's kind of the summary of those 2 columns. I mean, we could combine the information and say multi-race
I'm just asking
residents, and then we
where
could
it
put
says
in.
multiracial residents in the first sentence, you carry down you carry down Hispanic and Asian and Black or African American, but you've identified 4 different groups in the original sentence. So that multiracial is supposed to be inclusive of everybody else?
I think it's the some other, and 2 or more.
Right. So we could say, after that, we could say multiracial, and we could include it, and then we could put a footnote, and we could say include some other race alone, or 2 or more races.
Right, so I mean, then that way you're consistent between what you say in the first sentence and
What you
what
say
you
in the
add in the
yeah.
second sentence.
And also, is it possible just like in the narrative part, you have that on the chart, but just say the Hispanic population increased by 263, the Asian population increased by 423, and the Black African American population increased by 91.
And leave the percentages out.
And leave the percentages out, because to me, the percentages kind of skews the numbers.
But again, it's the percentage of change, it's not,
Right, I know, but it's in the, it could remain in the table chart.
But not
Just
in the
take it out of
paragraph.
the paragraph.
I mean, yeah,
Right.
the percent number could be eliminated and just.
Right, so I think that would read
Yeah,
better,
and that in about the multi,
yeah,
whatever they are.
correct.
I'm still
So-
not included in here.
So, just so we're all on the same page, the idea is, the current idea is to, in the sentence, to drop the percent change and just simply say, between 2010 and 2020, the Hispanic population increased by 263, the Asian population increased by 423, the Black or African American population increased by 91, and the multiracial population, footnote what that's defined by, increased by
297.
297.
Yeah.
But leave this table.
Leave the table as
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
and it'll have its own percentages and what, but just in the words
In the
on
word,
the.
okay, that's fine, that's, I think
That
that's a
works.
very
that
good
work?
idea.
that's
Yeah, I
what,
think that
that's
makes
what.
That's a good
yeah.
idea,
Okay,
very good idea.
Robert, you got that?
I think so, yep.
We'll check back with
We'll
me.
find out.
I think, yep, okay.
Okay, I think the other changes will go much quicker.
I didn't want to start making edits until everybody was agreeing, because I didn't want to cross out and strike through it several times, so.
But by the way, Robert, would such a change be considered a substantive change or not?
I mean, it's just rephrasing information, so I would think generally this would be non,
Okay.
but we can
I
make
agree
this
with that,
change
too.
before we.
I
I agree
agree.
with that.
I agree. I was just asking it in terms of
Wait.
whether we would have to wait for those changes to be printed in order to take up a motion tonight to find it substantially complete.
Well, you could take up a motion, but you would just have to include the items that you want changed, whether they're substantive or non-substantive, if you wanted to go that route.
I think we all would like to make sure we're
Taking up a motion.
Advancing.
we're advancing a motion
Yeah.
today, so whichever
Yeah.
way is logistically easy. We would like to have that change made before it goes live.
I'm
Okay.
making
I mean, I
notes.
think so far we have two, and we'll make sure that these are made. We'll talk about each one individually and like see where we get.
Okay.
But I think the two that have been mentioned so far, we'll make sure are made and are in the motion, that they'll be made before it gets transmitted.
What's your next page? Because I have something on page
17.
16.
Okay, then you're next, because my next is 17.
So a brief one on page 16 on the housing. It's the upper right-hand paragraph on owner-occupied units are primarily single-unit detached structures, single-family residential, although there are some two-unit structures, whereas renter-occupied units are much more diverse. 43% are located within one-unit structures, attached and detached, 25% within two-unit structures, and 30% within three-plus unit structures. Of these structures with 3 or more units in them, most units are located in structures with 20 or more units, with very few located in structures with 3 to 5 units, which indicates a lack of middle housing options. So when I read that, it all made sense, but I was wondering if it lacked context. Because we don't have a ton of
20 or more units.
of the 20 or more, like, is this Coachman Square? I think I can name on, like, one hand what is covered by this. But I'm not sure I had a good edit for it. It just sort of stopped me. Again, we're talking percentages here, but we don't actually know the total number of units in these how many renter occupied units. Now maybe that's deeper in the data, which I've now,
That kind of relates to my page 17, where there's a picture of Coachman Square as representative of housing without any context. And if anybody was looking at that, they would say, oh, what a nice apartment building Woodbridge has, not realizing that's an assisted living facility where you have to pay $6,000, $7,000 a month to live there for supports. Did people think that the Coachman Square was actually an apartment building?
comment about the pictures. Housing and people pictures are definitely lacking. We just incorporated pictures that, kind of fill the pages.
Okay,
But that was what I was gonna say, is that I think housing is one of the hardest things for, like, us as the consultant to take pictures of if we don't have them, because they're, the town is substantially residential, and there's all kind of like residential units all over the place. So if we're open to having different pictures of residential added, but we just need them.
okay.
So
Yeah.
is this a picture of what you'd want to have the Lucy Street? I mean, that's the only other one I can think of that would be actual rentals.
Right. Well, I don't think Coachman Square is represented.
No, I understand that,
yeah.
but I mean, we don't have any
But-
choices.
Yeah, so it's that or
Well, I
Lucy
think,
Street.
well, no, there's just houses in general. I think you could have a picture of a,
At the end of your paragraph where you were having the question, in parentheses there, or something, there could say, please see Appendix B for more information or detailed information about the housing.
Our housing stock and the number
Yeah,
of.
the number,
Yeah.
actual number.
I'd be fine with that, because it is percentages that are interesting, but it's percentage on a small number. But I'm fine adding a please see Appendix B for details on the housing stock.
so perhaps, the Lucy Street instead of the Coachman
Let's
Square.
take it from Merritt. Merritt, what, because it shows the little courtyard kind of thing.
Okay. So if pictures are just, so the pictures are just kind of placeholders for now?
Yeah.
Is
For the
that,
most part, I mean, yeah, pictures can definitely be changed, and
Yeah.
like I said, housing and people pictures are the hardest ones, and the one that we had the least of. So if you're able to take more and different pictures of housing that you'd like to add, that would be greatly appreciated.
okay.
But if
Oh.
we don't have a comment or edit about a picture, it's gonna stay, right?
I
So
think
we
so,
should
yeah.
maybe think through that a little more, knowing.
There was
Yeah.
one picture I wanted to have
Yeah.
taken out. It's on page 59.
Oh,
It says
we're not,
community gardens.
Yeah.
Do not trespass. That comes out, okay?
we're not there yet.
We're
I
not
think
that.
For pictures.
21 we
Roll back
made,
to page 16.
I know, but for pictures. For
No, I
pictures.
know.
no, but I have a picture on page 21, which
What
is,
is that?
Right,
it's
Amity.
Amity Plaza, which
Yeah.
is in New Haven.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but it's referencing that people work.
Yeah, it was,
I don't think people from Woodbridge work in,
Yeah, but then,
Yeah, no,
Oh, it's New Haven is a popular employment location for Woodbridge residents, but we
Right.
don't think people
I
in
don't think
Woodbridge work
Amity,
there.
so I would put a picture of downtown, like an overhead shot of New Haven if you wanted.
yeah.
I would too.
Convey
The
that.
thing
Or
is, there's no
Yale or-
captions under any of the photographs, which may be mostly okay, but it's just, there's a little danger for they all.
This-
Yeah, my,
this-
oh, go ahead.
this gives you the impression that this is a Woodbridge. And I
Right.
thought that too.
Right.
Yeah, no, my first look at is, I would have swapped the, where saloon and the
Right.
right approach and that Woodbridge shopping center versus this one. But if this is meant to be, a lot of our residents work in New Haven, to me, an overhead shot of New Haven Green would be the one to put, but that's even I don't even know if you want a picture of
That'll be
that.
No,
more confusing,
I
yeah.
think the Coachman Square thing.
So maybe the picture shouldn't refer to New Haven, but the picture should be about, another part of
I
this
like that.
I mean,
economy and workforce.
if you don't want a picture at this juncture because we don't have any more to pull from, what we can do is we can just take the picture out. If you don't want it to be in what gets transmitted, it could just say picture to come.
Picture to come would be better than people will complain that's not in what,
Yeah.
So that's.
So replacing the one on 21 with picture to come.
Yeah, because instead of the picture referring to New Haven being a popular employment place, it could refer to the paragraph before employment in Woodbridge is largely service-oriented, and then a picture of what that is.
Like Woodbridge Hardware
Yeah.
Store or the
Yeah.
Woodbridge
Yeah,
Running
exactly.
Club
That would
or
be, yeah.
Yeah,
any of those.
my dentist.
But yeah, we received very few pictures except for from Kathy and from the public. So now that you have a sense of like the pictures that are gonna be in here, get out there and take pictures.
Did we not find any good pictures from the zip code contest?
We did, but most of them are like, we have so many pictures of nature and parks
Oh.
and those types of things. I mean, there's an overabundance of like beautiful sunsets and shots, but there's very little of like,
Content.
there was none of the business district.
Okay.
There
We
was
must
a-
have an intern or something that we can use to go take pictures.
Yeah,
Alright,
no.
I'll take some pictures. The vice chair will go take some pictures.
But that's something that can be
Is it-
happening over
you
the
guys don't take
summer
pictures?
too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I did come and take some pictures that we were desperately in need of some because there wasn't a single picture of the business district, and I took some pictures so that we had at least some placeholders, and I didn't realize that I had gone over the town.
It's okay, it's okay,
Okay.
it's okay.
Anything between 21 and my next one is not until,
I have something on 22. I mean, it was just a question,
Did-
because page 22 talks about the tax revenues. And my only question was, it talks about total revenue from property taxes in fiscal year 2021 being the most recent year for which data is available. And I was just questioning, why don't we have more current data?
That's a good question.
And now that we do have a new, mill rate, we should put that in there.
Oh, we should have at least 2023,
Yeah, I would think so.
if not 24.
They're on the website.
They are on the website?
I mean, did that just get posted? Because again, this is from the data book. Again, we compiled all that data back at, in December, and, we can't continue to update the, everything that's in the data deck as the plan gets developed. So it kind of stopped in place. But if there's something like that, I mean, if the finance department is able to give us that information, and we can change it.
Can we just say then to update it to,
I'll give it to
available
Tony
information?
tomorrow and ask him to update it.
thanks.
Certainly 2023 should be.
Yeah.
Because they've got the 24 down.
And then on page 23, I was just really curious. It talks about the Woodbridge Village District, and it speaks to various historic structures. And outside of the church, I didn't know what other historic structures were in the Woodbridge Village District, or even if the church was a historic structure.
Is this pulled from the zoning information, Chris, or previous?
I believe so, yeah. I don't have my zoning book with me.
Well, I think that church is
It comes straight out of the zoning regs, I believe.
the Roman Catholic Church. It's been there a long time. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I saw. It talked about historic structures as if there was a lot
Yeah.
of structures we needed to, consider, and I couldn't think of anything besides the church.
Which church?
The Mother
The Mother
Church
The Mother Church, the Roman Catholic
on Landon and
on Litchfield Turnpike.
Litchfield.
Oh. Okay.
I'm trying to think of myself. I'm sure they're part of it.
Maybe we could just sleep on it.
Kathy, this goes back years, but I think when they came in Woodbridge, when they came up with the Woodbridge Village District, it was a part of how the state would call a certain overlay. So a certain overlay would have included in it by definition historical structures. So when you kind of take the overlay, you just put it on top of the zoning regulations. Part of that language may have come from the state.
It
So-
did come from there.
So that's kind of how, so even if there weren't, it's not very germane possibly
I-
to the
I was
area.
just-
It
again,
kind
I
of
was-
came with
I was
establishing.
just curious as to.
It came with establishing a village district. Listen,
Okay.
I'm not an attorney, I don't speak for the state or
Yeah.
anybody else. But I think it was part of the package.
Okay, it's a-
Okay, like it was an overlay package, that's what came with it.
Well, there was a big development plan at one time that was in that district. And I guess they just lost financing.
Can you move the mic closer to you? Thanks.
There was a big development plan in that, that may be where the name came from. And then it just was dropped. I think they couldn't get finance. We got into bad economic times, and that development never came to pass. But I think that's maybe related to that term, Woodbridge Village District. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I was just questioning what
Yeah.
was.
What was historic?
But that's okay. I mean, there is possibly one historic structure there, so. Okay, and page 35, I just thought, and again, I'm not sure if the pictures are supposed to be representing current conditions, but you're talking about pedestrian sidewalk facilities, and I thought maybe like a schematic representation of what 2030 is doing with their sidewalks, and, increasing, the pedestrian walkway, might be interesting to put in there, but I'm not sure of that.
What page was that, Claire?
On page 35,
36.
36.
35 and 36 has a picture.
35 is the description, 36 is the picture.
So, that was just a thought I had.
So are you saying in lieu of the pictures, or are you?
Well, at least maybe the top picture, to show that this is the future plan, this is what, that the town is considering. Again, I'm not sure.
What
it's gonna-
exhibit is it? Do you have what is it that you want to show there instead?
There was a presentation that the 2030 committee presented last week about how they're going to be doing, sidewalks improvements and walkways, and it was interesting to see this, to see what it could be, and
But there is a grant for that. There's an $8.6 million
Yes,
grant that's
yeah.
going to happen.
right. So I thought, since it is going to, well, I think DOT still needs to approve it, but there's a good possibility it's something like that's going to happen. So I thought it'd be cool if you put something in there from that to show that.
Do you want me to see if I
I
can?
mean, do they have a finished exhibit that we
There-
can incorporate?
This is, I think, the report that
This is
your
from
other
SLR
branch of
did it.
SLR did.
Yeah,
Well, there is the connectivity study,
Right,
right.
but there's a lot of exhibits in there.
yeah, so something from that. Right?
Right.
Just a random one, or?
Well, something that shows that we're trying to connect sidewalks and people.
So
Well,
on
if they
page,
connect, they're going to update them.
yeah, so on page 35, we do call out both the grant for the pedestrian safety in the town center to get from Amity High School to the town center. And it says we've received a local transportation and capital improvement program funding for complete streets in that Lucy, Bradley, Amity Road area. So if there is something, even if it is just a design or a conceptual
Yeah.
design, that might make sense instead of that top photo.
Yeah, and leave the bottom one because
Right,
that shows
but-
something that actually exists.
But in the spirit of we're gonna get you something to approve out the door today, if that top photo is to be replaced, photo to come later, that's fine.
Yeah. And then I had a comment on page 39, the photo of the police officer. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing.
I know.
And
I took it that he like hit the cow and was gonna shoot it because I've seen that happen.
I just
in
don't think
town.
it's a good
I know.
representation
It's a little.
of the police. It looks like he's sitting
On
on
Is
top
he
of
standing
his-
on top of his car?
Stand on top
Yes,
of
he
the
is
car.
on
Yeah.
his head.
Actually, that,
We love that picture
That-
from that we got from the public, but we can take it out.
I don't think it just
that
shows.
photo is in my driveway. And that, this was about 8 years ago. And that bull who escaped from maybe further than Bethany, but I think Bethany, ended up in my yard.
You call the police on him.
And the police were summoned, and he frightened this officer. He also gouged my siding, but that is my front yard.
All right.
I think a photo to come later.
And
That
just
did seem like a,
in terms of the narrative, the Woodbridge Police, I believe, has resumed control of the animal control facility, because we talked about the potential of doing that, but they have in fact resumed control of that.
Which page is that on?
Bottom of 39.
39.
It currently says the
Oh.
police, in the near future, the police department anticipates reassuming control of the Woodbridge Animal Control Facility.
So it just should say.
When we talked with them, they hadn't yet, so
I'll confirm that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they approved that.
And some pictures.
Okay, page 41, I was wondering if it was possible to include a schematic of the community and cultural center, of what that's gonna look like.
the what? Say that again?
Page 41, to include a schematic of the community and cultural center.
Does somebody have one?
They have a schematic of what it's gonna
So
look
we'd
like.
add another page in.
Yeah, that would be on page 42.
Okay.
Then that would make 42, 43, 43, 44.
Okay.
So add,
Or maybe you can make the library smaller. Pictures.
well, schematic, I'll see what I can find. I know.
I mean,
All right. Next.
on page 46,
Actually, 43.
okay.
At the very top, the text, I think, jumps into the fire services, but at least I didn't see like a header for it or a bullet for it. And it also, I think, starts with an acronym that I don't think is defined. So is there like a missing paragraph?
Yeah.
It feels like there's a missing paragraph.
Yeah, because it
Yeah.
doesn't have a bullet. Like the
Well,
others
it's all
do.
under the
The Woodbridge,
Community Facilities and Services section.
Yeah, but you've
Yeah,
got
there is,
subheaders.
but you have
Yeah,
subheaders for
Department
Public
of
Works and
Public Works.
Library and
Yeah.
everyone else.
Yeah, it needs a subheader, you're right.
Or is it
Yeah.
buried under that photo of the plow? Is where I thought it
Yeah,
might.
we did, I know that there was some last minute adjustments here. I think something did,
It looks like something. I think it's.
there's a header that's missing at the top of page 43. And even though I checked that, I don't know how I didn't see it, but it should say the fire department.
Mhm.
And there may be another, I think there's another paragraph that's missing too.
Yeah, and my guess is it would define WVFD
Yes.
as Woodbridge Volunteer Fire Department.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Go ahead.
Okay. And with that, and again, maybe we're limited to pictures because then it's going to screw up the pages, but I'm just wondering if you wanted to put a picture of the shed training facility with the fire department, since that's pretty much done, but that's just a thought.
No,
Okay.
The what now?
Agreed. No, we're good.
Okay, that's fine.
We're good.
Page 46, the map, and maybe this is something that has to be taken up with Deep, but it shows the Woodbridge Country Club as being protected open space.
Does it?
No, it doesn't.
No,
Yes,
that's,
It's not,
That's a different parcel.
oh, do I have a personal?
No.
Yeah,
well, it's.
Below 15.
that,
That's on the other
that
side
parcel
of the thing.
belongs to the Woodbridge,
Okay, I'm getting my parcels mixed up. Okay, I'm sorry.
Park, don't they have a piece of land adjacent to this development? And I think that's what their property is.
No, this one's off of Race Road.
No, that, it's showing part of the country club as protected open space.
Maybe I'm on the wrong map, I don't see.
We're on page 46.
Right.
The country
Right,
club's
so-
off of Ansonia
So
Road. and
below
I don't-
Ansonia Road.
yeah.
Yeah, but that, I think that's the place where
No,
you have
that's
the
the,
pond.
you know what that is?
Yeah,
That's
that-
the Woodbridge Park Association.
Yeah, that's what I said, the
property.
Woodbridge
Yeah.
Park, that's what that
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's not the country club.
yeah, and the project we're considering is to the right of it, basically.
Okay, my bad.
All right.
All right, and to Jeff's point, page 59, you know, I did kind of submit this picture as.
I'm sorry, are you at
Right.
59?
Am I?
I'm
Oh,
not
you have
there
anything
yet.
between? Okay.
On page 47, under the Recreation Facilities and Programs and the Woodbridge Recreation Department and Commission, there is a list of Recreation Commission that has identified future programming goals with a long list of things. I just wanted to confirm that an Olympic-sized swimming pool facility is like
It's a goal.
is a goal. Okay. These are all news to me, so
Yeah, no, they gave us that stuff.
I just want to confirm that. Okay.
Because there's much discussion about filling in the pool at Beecher Road School.
Okay. I'm fine keeping it. I just wanted to get
Yeah.
a sense of where it came from.
No,
All right.
next page, who's got it?
I have 59. Do you have anything between that?
Yeah, I have 53, which I think is more of a note just for us. On steep slopes, it says steep slopes generally include those over 15%, semicolon. However, the town zoning regulations classify steep slopes at greater than 25%, which I don't know is just something I just noted, not for changing, but just perhaps we should address that. So 25% is
That's really,
really
really steep.
Deep.
I don't think, is it?
That's what you exclude from your buildable square and buildable area.
Oh,
Oh,
in
that
your
was, because
zoning
that's
regs.
really steep.
okay.
If you wanna make it less, you can.
Well, no, I guess that's why I flagged it, because so that is a reason in our
And
zoning
that's the
reg.
reason it's
Okay.
in there. So buildable
I-
area excludes public utility area or rights of way, 25% slopes and wetlands. So,
Okay, we can leave it as is.
yeah. Now we're up to 59?
Yeah, and I just want to come clean on this because I did submit that picture kind of as a joke because I didn't think it'd end up in the draft of the POCD because I thought it was kind of a oxymoron that, you know.
That's how I took it, Kat. It's okay, you're forgiven. That's how I
Yeah.
took it. It was
I
kinda
just,
funny.
yeah, I thought it
Okay.
was funny that it's community gardens and,
On
you
the
know,
on the individual privately maintained ones within the community.
yeah, but I just,
But there's some irony to it, I agree.
right, right.
Yeah, we can delete
We
that.
can leave that.
But
Okay,
I
Rob?
Yeah.
I do have some pictures of, I did trespass, and I have some pictures of the community garden if you want
I
another
mean,
one
is
to
there a
replace
sign
that.
that just says community gardens or something like that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't know if there's a
Or
sign.
can you take a picture of like, more of like the gardens themselves?
I do have a couple of pictures of the garden. I have like a couple of pictures of the Shanty Rose Garden, which is nice.
There's some beautiful areas in there that could be by yourself.
Yeah, no, I'll send it to Chris before I leave.
Okay.
Okay. I'm on 65.
I'm good, man.
Okay, my only thought was the embracing sustainability and resiliency is like, you put that in green, and I understand why you put that in green, but to me, it feels like it's calling that out as,
Which page is that?
it's, well, it's kind of like shown in green. Let's see, it starts in page 64, embracing sustainability and resiliency. And then the green theme is carried over with you know, doing a green font. And I just thought it would look, I know this is kind of picky, but if you just kind of kept the font consistent with the themes,
I see what you're saying.
and keep it black, and if you want to put a green, you know, green element in there on page.
Kathy. You wanted the green to turn black, you said?
Right, to just keep it consistent. So it's not like,
So there's like blue underneath it.
right, so what I'm suggesting is maybe make the bag black and keep the green leaf, so you want to keep some green in there, but then keep everything else consistent with the fonts. So you have embracing sustainability and resiliency, just put that in a black font like everything else. Because it just,
I think technically the first one is blue, the second one is green, and the third one looks like a
Brown.
brownish
oh, is that what it's supposed to
maroon.
be?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what,
Yeah.
then I get it now. The colors didn't come through. All right,
Yeah.
if
The
that's.
colors are very subtle just because we went with the subtle color.
Okay, so I
thing
thought
with
they were
the
both
color.
black, and that
Yeah.
was just green, but,
You can see the brown better when you're actually in that section.
gotcha, I didn't realize
It was
that.
brown and not purple, right?
Mm. The text could be black though, and then the symbol could just be the color, but,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
you've done enough changes.
All right, that's, I get it. I didn't realize it was color coded. I thought this, the embracing sustainability and resiliency was the only thing that was color coded.
no, there are three colors there, they're
Yeah,
just subtle.
I did not see that. Okay, gotcha. All right, page 71. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't.
Gee, let's see what strategy. So goal 1.3, strategy G, and I know this was like a common strategy that was in a lot of different places, but I think since it's related to increase housing options and affordability, that for G, when you talk about develop and evaluate a plan for the Woodbridge Country Club property that balances development, conservation, and recreation with the goal of preserve, enhance, and transform, I thought perhaps you could just say any development opportunity should include a mix of residential uses and not talk about a mix of commercial uses, because I'm not sure if there is commercial uses, but since this is focused on housing, to just talk about including residential uses.
I think we were trying to have that same language on all the times we reference the country club.
And I think part of it, we checked with the board, with the selectmen, and what they were talking about was what they were considering as commercial was like a, you know, a
Support,
recreation center or something like that.
supportive
or a
type of
restaurant
thing.
or something like that.
yeah, supportive, not,
Okay.
I think we discussed this at length previously.
Okay, I didn't, it seemed like you were tweaking the language a little bit
No,
when you
I-
were fitting that in there, so.
No, we
no,
got that.
I think we were trying, you know, this is, like you mentioned already, the same action item is in several locations, and it's
It says.
it's somewhat generic in the sense that it's the standard language that we've received from the Board of Selectmen for this item, and it's subject to change as they continue to move on their process over the summer, and that might be a change that we get from them when they do their review, or maybe prior to adoption, where we would change them all to be more specific, depending on maybe the final outcome of that study. So On this one, I would say stay tuned as we go through the 65-day review period.
And I would prefer just keeping it the same boilerplate,
For right now.
repeating it a few over and over.
So if you do that, then you would drop the last sentence. Because under on page 77, it doesn't include the last sentence.
Which is that?
Yeah, I think it maybe during our reviews. With the, one of our reviews earlier, specifically, we added that last sentence, but we could take that last sentence out in this location.
I
For
don't
right
think I
now.
would take the sentence out, because I think you want to have the sentence in there considering residential uses. I mean, I think it's fine. I just thought there should be more.
Okay.
Everywhere else it says balanced development, conservation, and recreation, so unless if you're leaving it the same, and then if it changes based on what they complete this summer, then we'll update it accordingly.
That's true.
Where is this now? Okay,
Page
77J.
Or 70.
71?
So it's
Letter G.
71
G.
G.
And then we looked at it again at 77J when there's a sentence difference. I'm talking about the consistency.
So how is it different than 77?
There's, the last sentence is missing on J, 77.
The last sentence where it says any development opportunity should include a mix of both commercial and residential uses. As a group, we had added that just in this section, but if we want to be consistent and wait to see what happens, we should take that sentence out for right now. is
I
what's
see,
being
so in J you
proposed.
left that out.
Is what's being proposed right now.
So you don't want to put that in here to be
Well,
consistent?
I mean, I was fine with that sentence. I'm all shut.
I guess as a TPZ, do you want to have that extra sentence in this location, but the rest of it remain
I mean,
the same, or do you want them all, I think it's listed in either 3 or 4 locations with the other part of the sentence, or action step being the same in all the other
I
locations.
think it should reflect what it did earlier. But
On
on page 71, whatever it was, shouldn't this pretty much have the same kind of wording to it, so it's consistent?
So the question is, so I think we all agree we want it consistent, but do we
Yeah.
want it consistent with the
without.
additional sentence that's currently in G on page 71, or without that sentence, which is where I think it stands elsewhere?
Right, that's correct.
So the added sentence is any development opportunity should include a mix of both commercial and residential uses.
yeah, and since it was under that goal of increasing housing opportunities, I thought I should just reflect the residential uses.
Kathy, what if we change the word should to may?
No, the only question was, I mean, it could be, it could just stay the way it is, or just get rid of the commercial use if it's talking about, if the goal is to increase.
I know it's in the housing section.
Right, to just
I
talk
get it.
about increasing housing.
Yeah.
So that was my only comment.
But you may need some commercial supportive development there to help the housing. I don't think I would take it out of there.
It could just stay the way it is.
I think you should leave that, honestly.
If we leave it, are we adding it to J?
I don't see why you can't, but if you want to leave it separately here,
I mean, the whole point is that that's may change over the summer,
Yeah.
because if the country club stuff comes out, then you're gonna wanna, so right now it's a placeholder more than anything.
So maybe we'll just make a note to revisit
Yeah.
this after they come up with their master plan. for
yeah,
the
that's
first one.
probably
Yeah,
That
just,
sounds right.
Okay.
So leave it all as it is right now.
yeah.
Is
Okay.
everyone okay with that?
I'm
Yep.
okay with
Yes.
The recognition that, as
It could
we've always
change,
assumed,
right,
this
yeah.
one was one that is likely
Yeah.
going to change.
Yes.
So this is gonna stay in,
So,
Yep.
as is,
okay.
okay.
Strategy,
What page?
77. I'm sorry, the strategy 2.1.2, protect and conserve natural resources and scenic views. And I know we went over this before, but, you know, when I started reading this more carefully, this really kind of struck a responsive chord. It talked about, so G, consider regulatory protections, especially in considering large developments for natural resources that contribute to the town's scenic character, including ridges and steep slopes and stone walls, trees of large canopies, fields, and view sheds. I think our goal is in trying to remove regulatory barriers to development, and I just really saw this as directly targeted to preventing development.
I think, Kathy, that we did discuss this at great length, and the word consider was in replacement of a different first word
Yeah, but
that said employ or.
that was F we did. So we did the consider for F, but I didn't
I thought we did consider for this one.
for
Yeah,
G.
I think we changed it in both places.
Yeah, I just, again, if our goal is to remove regulatory barriers, I don't know why I would want to even put consider in there. I mean, that's, again, it's just my perspective.
Well, even if it's not in there, it could be put into the I'm just saying it could be put into the zoning regulations if you want to change some of these things. Even if it's not in this.
When you
It's not-
talk, can you speak up because I
No, I'm
don't
saying
think-
it, even if it's not specifically spelled out here, the town plan and zoning could put something in, a regulation. I don't think it prevents you from putting in a regulation.
Well, what I'm saying
Yeah.
is we shouldn't even be considering these types of regulations when it's directed to large developments.
Well, there are plenty of restrictions now in the zoning. You probably don't really have to have this here. You want to leave it out. It is-
Well, it's coming under, the strategy is to protect and conserve natural resources and scenic views.
Kathy, I don't take that to be that it's anti-development or that it's excluding any potential.
Okay, just,
I'm comfortable with it. The word consider has enough
Yeah, that's
fungibility
fine.
to it that I think it can be moved a little bit.
As am I, and I think that's why we had chosen it.
That's good, okay.
Anyone else?
No, that's fine.
So I think we're keeping that as is for now. Obviously, comments will come in.
They will come in, yeah.
Okay, next.
do you have any more?
I don't.
Okay. Page 88, strategy 3.3.2, utilize the Woodbridge Open Space Plan to preserve natural spaces. Under C, it says, apply long-term land protections to town-owned open space parcels. And I kind of see that as a blanket statement, and I would feel more comfortable if it said something like explore, applying long-term land protections to appropriate
How about consider?
or consider,
Consider.
but not to like all town-owned open, to like, appropriate town-owned open space parcels, because I don't think we should be putting land protections on all town-owned open space parcels.
Well, probably it would be selective if you did. I don't think you'd just put in a regulation for all the town land. It would probably apply to a particular property. I don't know, I'm just saying.
Or particular, I mean,
Yeah.
that's.
But
what I-
consider
Yeah, I think
is a
consider
good,
solves the problem.
good idea. That way it gives you the flexibility,
Replace apply with consider.
yeah.
I think the word
The open
appropriate makes a lot of
space.
sense there, though. So
Yeah.
that it's not just a blanket statement.
Right.
Appropriate
Right,
makes
'cause the
Yeah.
open
Consider
space-
appropriate long-term.
appropriate town-owned
land.
Or
Right.
considered
Well,
long-term land protections for appropriate town.
I like that.
Exactly.
That's good.
Appropriate.
Right.
I like that.
That's very good.
Well,
Excellent.
one thing that I'd like to point out, or just make sure, is it's not all town-owned parcels, it's town-owned open space parcels. Open space parcels that have been specifically identified as open space. That's the point here, not all town-owned parcels.
Right,
Because not all
but,
town
No, I-
parcels are open space parcels.
but not all open space parcels are protected.
And I don't think that is offended by the inclusion of consider and appropriate.
Right. I mean, I think that would,
Right.
that would
That's a
work.
very good change.
So what is it now? Say that again?
Consider long-term land protections to appropriate town-owned open space parcels. I think that's what we were
Yes.
into, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then my last comment is on the future land use plan. Because it seems like our discussion of incorporating high-density residential is not in here. And, you know, if the idea is we don't want to say high-density residential, even though it is allowed in very limited areas, that we should just allude to it at least. So
Where are you considering?
So under low-density residential, this is future land use, which is on page 88.
Well, you might recall that we talked about that in great detail at the last meeting, and there wasn't any parcels to identify as high-density multifamily residential,
That's my recollection.
and that's why we didn't add it. And that there was a little bit of adjustment to the moderate density discussion.
But we do have regulations that do allow high-density housing. And even though we don't currently have any projects, not yet, my thought was, in order to just kind of allude to that, is to say, and this is under the low-density residential, to say multifamily structures are permitted under circumstances, and then which can provide higher, just put something like which can provide higher density. So,
Well, I think
Where do
Yeah,
you see this?
Robert and I talked about this a lot, and we clarified them to say low density and moderate density, and then we included them, the ability to have multifamily in both,
right,
figuring that it's stated in there in terms of how it can be done, because multifamily is obviously higher density. And then we were trying to describe the circumstances under which they could occur.
Good. I think from our last meeting, we did have a high-density multifamily residential
Right.
We did.
category.
Right, you did,
But it
but
didn't,
we didn't have an assisted living residential really in there, so it's your plan, whatever you want to do. We don't have parcels that are identified as high density, they're limited to what the criteria are under the thing, so you decide what you wanna do, but we just couldn't figure out how to, because we were also looking at it in terms of the map on page 95, which was identifying where those different areas are. And we couldn't pull out, because if, in particular, if you say low-density residential and you look at where the yellow is, it's everywhere,
Right,
but it's not, but when you layer in that public water, public sewer as it currently exists, it's not everywhere.
Yeah.
and
So,
that layering made this map a mess.
and
if you
that
tried.
layer, we tried, and I mean, I knew where I was looking at the stuff, and it was tough.
I mean, I just recommend, again, just to, so we get higher, and I'm not saying high density as a new category, high density residential, but just to add the multifamily structures are permitted under some circumstances, which can provide higher density. So you have the higher density in there.
We just
Okay.
agreed with that.
I wanted to put that in the low
Under
density
but
residential.
low and moderate.
So when you,
What page is that? I
It's
just-
on-
93.
93.
So it's in under moderate density, it's the, I think it's the third sentence.
well, I was looking at the low density residential.
But you've got, it references it also in the moderate density, so if you're gonna be consistent,
Okay,
it should
then
go
put it,
both
put it
places.
both places.
And because the trick here is that this future land use plan, these paragraph descriptions correspond to the colors of the map
Mhm.
and the key of the
Right.
map intentionally, right?
I mean, I think it's probably, I mean, if, we're kind of implying that multifamily is higher density, but you could say higher, you know, which allows for a higher density. You could add that, but it's like almost the same thing, multifamily. But I would caution, I know, and you're not moving in that direction, but like when we were originally talking about adding a high density, because I don't know if what even your code permits is really would be considered high density by the state definition.
Even if
just
it's
a-
with multifamily.
Right,
Because
it's
you
just
have a lot of
higher-
land
right,
around
it's
the
still a
multifamily.
moderate density,
Yeah,
like when you
right.
get, but you would get a higher. It's okay to
Right.
say higher, but not high density,
Right,
if you
right.
understand the difference.
I think we should say higher density, because, you know, if we are able to get a 96, unit apartment, that.
I mean, do you want it in like parentheses after multifamily structures and then put in parentheses higher density or something like that?
Or you could say higher density multifamily structures are permitted under some circumstances.
Right, then you
Yeah,
could say
that
that
works.
too.
Yes, I mean, just
In
to,
Say it in both
low
locations.
density and the moderate density.
Yeah.
Say it in both locations.
And
Yeah.
just, and then it is higher density,
Higher.
not the technical definition that the
Right.
state might have of high density.
So higher density multifamily
I think that's a good
structures in both
compromise.
locations.
Yep.
Is that really your last page?
Okay,
That is, sorry to disappoint you, did you want more?
Well, no, it's okay, it's only 118 pages, so.
Anyone else with any other?
I have, you got the Derby, the name of the town, Derby, right? You got that, Robert? You
The
gonna add that
introduction, yeah.
to the introduction? Yes.
can you just
okay.
remind me of what
Which
page
page?
that's on?
It's not marked on the page I have, because I printed it out, but it's under, it says Introduction to the Town of Woodbridge, and the first paragraph, Robert, under Introduction to the Town of Woodbridge, has all the towns that border on us except for Derby. Robert,
Yeah.
here.
It's
I got
before
it.
the pages.
She's
Yeah, it is before
It's
the-
technically page
Okay.
2, it's just.
All right, thank you so much. I
Yeah.
didn't want to rule out a town that actually bordered
Derby is small but mighty.
us.
Okay,
Dirk Quail O'Neill is there, it has to be mentioned.
Yes.
That's true.
All right, point of order, all right, whatever, privilege. And then, let me see here. Can't read in the dark. Page 4, second paragraph down. A little bit of a typo with the parentheses. I think something has to be plural.
Where are we?
Page 4, second paragraph on the left, down.
Yeah,
TOCD is a product of community members' knowledge.
Here.
That one?
So you're saying that members shouldn't have the apostrophe S on the end? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's possessive.
It is possessive.
Because it's community members' knowledge?
It's a weird place to put
The
the
parentheses.
parentheses.
The parenthetical
The pa-
is a product of community members' knowledge,
parentheses. Yeah.
including town staff
And the
TPZ.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about that? You split the possessive by
Yeah.
So
by
you want
a
to,
parenthetical. So
Just move those
Okay.
to after knowledge.
okay?
Jeff, anything else? Okay. Anyone else?
Did we go through all of yours?
Yeah, you got all mine.
Okay.
I will make a motion.
A motion.
I will make a motion to find that the draft, including the changes that we just made over the last
Hour and a half.
hour and a half, is substantially complete, and that we authorize it being forwarded to the Board of Selectmen for the 65-day review period.
Starting on July 7th.
Sure, starting on July 7th.
Is that good, Rob? July 7? Encourage.
I think so. Would you have any trouble getting it transmitted on those days?
it's gonna go electronically, so.
So
I don't think that I'll have trouble getting these edits. I only have like one day, and I know I think my staff person that would help me is here, hopefully, but if we have to make a slight adjustment to that, I'll let
The
you know.
10th, would that help?
How about July 10th, but no later than July 15th? Would that give you enough wiggle room?
Yeah, I think so.
So moved. I will second that. And we're seating Sarah. Who are we seating?
I didn't bring my sheet up.
That's what.
Oh, you have your sheet?
I have
yes.
the sheet. So Sarah,
Yes, that,
definitely. But do we need more?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
You think you
everybody
need
gets seated.
everybody.
Everybody
right.
gets seated. All right.
And does this include the pictures or not? Those
No,
all
it's
the,
later.
all the changes
All
that we talked about.
But the pictures that are going to come out and be replaced with a picture
Got it.
to
Right.
come later.
That's
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So you don't have to get the actual pictures.
Right.
Right, that's correct. And I know that we talked about a possible picture of the community center, cultural center,
Cultural
and
central
also
plan.
maybe the connectivity plan. Those, we may not have a placeholder for them, but we'll work on that over the summer. But the other pictures that you wanted taken out, we'll definitely make sure that those are taken out.
And it'll just be replaced
And
with
it'll
a.
just say picture to come.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
Because that's an easy fix.
But are we looking to get this to the Board of Selectmen for their July meeting, which is
Yeah.
the 9th?
I would go for August under the current plan. It would be August.
Do they meet in August? Did we
They
find
would
out?
meet on the 9th, so we'll try for the 7th if we can, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so the,
Or the 8th.
because they would, I mean, what would happen at that meeting with them?
They would formally receive it.
They would just, and they have to go through like a process to formally receive
So the
it.
65,
Well, I'm just saying, you
Yeah.
know, then they've received it, they can discuss it. If they want to have a hearing, they can schedule a
Okay,
hearing.
because then they don't have any more meetings anytime
They
until
may
like
or may not
September.
have a meeting in August, I'm not.
If they get it on the 8th, do they have to read it by the 9th for the meeting,
No,
or just
they're
receive it?
receiving
They're
it,
just receiving
and then
it.
they
That
can
seems fine.
discuss it. and-
so 65 days starts when they formally receive it, not when it's
Yeah.
transmitted?
Right.
No, it's when it's submitted to them.
Yeah, but if they're gonna have,
But what if we
if they're gonna
submit it-
receive it on the 9th, then that means we would have to transmit it to them on the 7th or 8th.
Why?
Because that's just the formality of the
You
situation.
have to have a day in between?
No, but I mean, if we don't get it to them until the 15th, they wouldn't be able to formally receive it on the 9th.
That's why I'm saying the
Right.
8th
That's why I asked.
Does the 8th?
It could be the 7th or the 8th, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll
So
just
we
plug
need
those.
to
numbers in.
amend our motion.
Yes.
So amend your motion to,
Pulling into the
No
8th.
later than July 8th.
And no later than July 8th.
and I have seconded the amended motion. Further discussion on the motions as amended?
No.
Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? So,
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Well, I just was going to say one more quick thing, is just remember about pictures, if you have any. And I did want to ask Mr. Hunter, we haven't given you, in the back, you asked where picture captions were. There's a consolidated page in the back.
Okay.
And right now, when I had talked with Chris, the pictures that we received from the town, that included town pictures, and then from the ones that Citizen had submitted on the Woodbridge Day, as well as the ones that you had submitted, we just credited the town. But we can, if you want your pictures credited, we can. It's your call, but you can let us know that.
as we work on pictures over the summer, we will figure out.
And you can
the
take more
appropriate
pictures
captions.
over the summer, so
In
that's
some
just.
Yeah.
states, you need a
Probably better
model
off
waiver
not
as well, so
crediting
Mr. Hunter would have to sign a model waiver.
No, those are my pictures.
I know, but, well, you'd have to maybe sign this
Yeah.
thing, it's a public document.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't care, but, I think it might be a good idea for people to know that even though I try to promote affordable housing, I do love nature as well, and
Right. Okay, well, we can talk about that, but just, I wanted to make sure that we didn't purposely not give you credit, but,
Yeah.
and if you supply more pictures, we'll work on that credit page.
yeah, I mean,
and
no,
then
if you're not gonna credit
we will-
anybody, then I'm fine.
We will come back together again too sometime in the summer to talk about the implementation table, so.
So, motion and I second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
again,
you.
Robert.
So